You are listening to Committed, an ongoing conversation about marriage, intimacy, relationships, and sex. I'm a marriage and relationship coach dedicated to helping couples and individuals like you build stronger, more fulfilling relationships. I have a deep understanding of communication dynamics, conflict resolution, and intimacy. I guide clients through challenges with compassion and expertise. Should we open our relationship? This is a question that I think is so pertinent in our society today because so many more couples are exploring the opportunity to move forward from monogamy and open their relationships up to have greater connections with other people. Sexual monogamy is definitely the norm. And when people get into relationships, I believe that they often don't have the discussion around what their relationship structure is going to look like. Because as we know, the default is definitely to be monogamous in the relationship. And I want to first be fully transparent about my views of monogamy versus opening up your relationship. And also, I want to put out there the understanding that open relationship is a very broad term. Some people practice open relationships. Some people practice swinging. Some people practice what they might call non-monogamy. And definitionally, there are differences between these things. Some people are solo polyamorous. And so if you're interested in this, I would invite you to do some more research on what each of these terms mean and what you might be interested in. Because if it's something that piques your interest, you should know that there are many different ways to go about this. I think the default might be that you think that if you open up your relationship, it means that you and your partner have other partners outside of your partnership with one another. And that is not necessarily the case, right? So there are different structures. So back to what I was just saying about my personal belief. My personal belief is that different relationship structures work for different people. And we don't want to decide what other people should be doing ever. So, what might work for me might not work for somebody else, and vice versa. And so, I am just very open and non judgmental. I think there are benefits and drawbacks to both. And so, I want to go through some of my thoughts on that today. And then I also asked my community, I didn't give them a lot of time to give me their questions and thoughts, but I'm going to read you a couple. I haven't diagnosed these things in depth at all. I took a very, very quick glance. And so on the fly, I'm going to respond. So first on my list, when I think about open relationship and exploring that and whether that could work for a couple is going to be, do you have a solid foundation? When I think about a solid foundation, what I really consider is how's your communication? Do you have strong communication skills with one another? I also think about your childhood and how that shaped you. I really, really want couples to know each other deeply before they're thinking about opening up to other people, because I don't want to say that open relationship is more difficult, but I do think it takes different elements of your relationship that need to rear their faces, and you have to consider some different things. There are lots and lots of challenges with monogamy itself, right? You are relying on one person for a lot of different things that might be difficult for them to give to you. At the same time, when you're opening up your relationship, you are sometimes for people opening up this wound of like, is this person going to abandon me? Is this person going to emotionally leave me but physically stay with me? And so it just introduces other aspects that you may not have to deal with if you are in a monogamous relationship with one another. As I mentioned, communication is really, really big. Understanding each other's backgrounds and who your partner is on a really deep level. So this is going to be really important because I think that there are some couples who do live on the surface with one another. I think it's hard to if you're in a relationship for a long time. If you've been together for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you do probably know each other pretty deeply. But if you have found that over time, you've lived more on the surface, maybe based on your life circumstances, or just based on drifting apart for one reason or another, you don't want that to be the case when you're choosing to open up. So you want to make sure that you have a deep connection with one another, that you're communicative about your emotions, about what's going on in your life, about what you're looking forward to, and that you're feeling really safe with one another. So that's part of what I mean by having a solid foundation. Also, I want to see the intimacy is working between the two of you. Opening up your relationship is not a band-aid just because your partner doesn't want to have sex with you. If you're struggling in your sex life and your intimacy is not, I was going to use the word thriving, but at least it is not working well or as you would want it to, and you have any sort of resentment or your partner has resentment or you struggle with conflict, well, you want to explore that together first, because opening up your relationship, unfortunately, could really open up a can of worms. Now I've met this other person, I've had an interaction, and now they're fulfilling my needs in a way that you weren't. And as you can probably imagine, that can cause problems in your primary relationship. As I'm saying primary relationship, I'm noticing my own languaging that I use. And I often use this with many of my couples because I work with mostly monogamous couples that are heterosexual. And so if people are looking to open up their relationship, they're looking at my marriage is my primary relationship that I have. But like I said, there are different structures that people can have where they might not have a primary relationship, meaning they have multiple relationships with other people that all feel really equal to them. Your primary relationship, if that's where you're sitting and you're looking to open it up to include other people in some way, shape, or form, it should be really, really solid. You're feeling good. If something's off in your sex life, you want to explore that otherwise. Next, you're both interested in this relationship makeup and the potential outcomes. You don't know what is to come. That's really important. You have to go into it being open to what's going to happen next. If your communication is strong, then you'll be committed to exploring what happens when we start to open things up. We're going to need to sit down and talk about it. Now, first and foremost, you both need to be interested in having a open relationship, some type of openness. If one person is not on board with it, you should not move forward. And let me repeat that. If one person does not want an open relationship, you should pause at least. There will be some people who would never want any sort of openness in their relationship, and you should respect that for your partner. It's only going to cause more issues if you try to push them into doing something that they are not comfortable with. And I get it. That really sucks. But I also want you to be open to the fact that over time, you may find that your partner has a different perspective on it. Sometimes people have conversations with one another where they're kind of seated in their space of this is what I think and this is how I feel. And then over time, as they are able to sit with the discussions that you've had, things can change. I know someone who a long time ago had asked his wife for some type of openness in the relationship. Emotional intimacy with others was already happening. They shared really nice, strong, lovely connections with some of their friends that felt really good and juicy, but not physical. And he wanted to take some of those relationships to a next step and had proposed that to his wife. And she said, absolutely not. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not interested in that. And that's it. And so what he ended up doing, because he was so committed to their marriage, is that he left it. He said, that's where you're at. I want to respect that. I want to honor that. I don't want to disrespect you. And so he paused. A year later, which sounds like a long time, but we're all busy with life. It's not like we're just sitting around waiting for sexual relationships with other people to happen or openness in our relationships to happen. His wife came to him and said, I've seen you over the past year, and I just feel like you're not able to express yourself in the way that is going to make you happy. And so, if you want to start to explore this, I want that for you, even though I'm scared. What ended up happening is absolutely nothing. Sometimes wanting to open up a relationship has to do with wanting the freedom to be able to connect with other people. It's not that our primary partnerships are not enough for us, but for some of us, based on our backgrounds and our histories and who we are, we need to take that into consideration. Feeling like we are confined in our relationships for the rest of our life is a difficult place to be. But when we are given the go ahead, I understand this is who you are, it often results in this feeling of internal peace that, oh my gosh, this person is not trying to control me. They want me to be happy. They want me to do the things that make me feel satisfied and content. And now I don't have as much of an urge to get those things done or do anything about what I said that I wanted. So, now in all fairness, that person who is giving their partner the go ahead should be ready for their partner to move forward with it if that is what their partner chooses to do. Because you can't say, all right, I'm going to give you the go ahead and then just think, well, all you needed was the freedom. And so if you actually move forward with the freedom, that you're not going to do anything with it, or else I will be hurt or this relationship will be broken, because that's not helpful for either of you. Next, some realistic hangups that may come up along the way as you are exploring opening up your relationship. So now we've had solid communication, right? Our intimacy is working for us. It's just that there's maybe something more. There's a different part of us that we want to explore, but this is all in transparency, all in honesty, right? And we're both interested in having an open relationship structure of some sort that we agree on. And then before I move forward, I want to share a couple structures, I guess, or ideas you could consider if you are interested in some type of openness. So the first one is having emotional intimacy with other people. Maybe you have some friendships of the opposite sex or the same sex that you want to take to the next level, where it's not just a friendship anymore. It's something that feels a little bit more. Maybe you can flirt with one another, or maybe you can have some deep conversations that you weren't having before. And that constitutes as openness in your relationship. It's all about what you agree on. But maybe you have some of those interactions with other people. That's a really soft way to get a need met, to have some curiosity, exploration, whatever the openness is going to do for you. That's a great way to start to explore that in a safe way that you could pull back on at any time, right? And all throughout this process, you're communicating with your partner about how it's going along the way. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more after. Another structure that you might consider is engaging sexually with your partner in front of other people. So a long time ago, I found out about a club in New York City called NSFW, and it's for millennials, and it's a sex club. And something that I thought was really cool is that you could go to the sex club, and you could do this many ways. You can do stuff online if that's something that you guys are interested in. You could maybe go to a swingers party. You could have sex with your partner in front of other people, or engage in sexual acts with your partner in front of other people. That might be a way to open your relationship a bit in a way that feels safe enough for the two of you. So if you and your partner happen to be interested in exploring what it looks like to share your sexuality with others in a way that doesn't physically interact with other people, that could be something to consider looking at. Another thing that you might do is you might choose to swing with other couples. So swinging with other couples also might look like having sexual interactions with your partner, going out on a group date, like a double date, maybe going back to somebody's place and having sex with your partner while they're having sex with their partner, or having some type of sexual act happen. It doesn't have to be sex, but it could be something else. You could swing with other people in that way. You could also swing in terms of swapping partners. And so you're both experiencing this together, which is something that your partner might be interested in if they're a little bit hesitant on having some type of openness in your relationship. Being able to experience this together could be helpful. You could swap partners, like I said. You could also, one person could swap. You can also do cuckolding, where one partner is watching the other engage sexually with another person. You could also do things a little bit more privately. Like partners might say, I don't want to visualize or be there when you are engaging with someone else. So you develop a private relationship with somebody else. There's many different ways to explore how the openness of your relationship could go, some that involve the physical aspects and some that absolutely don't at all. Some realistic hangups now that might come up along the way. The first one is jealousy. This one is probably going to come up, right? Because we even have jealousy in our monogamous relationships where your partner looked at someone a certain way, or they mentioned that they thought somebody was good looking, or that girl's hot, or I like his butt, or ooh, he's really muscular. This comes up in our monogamous relationships as well. It's probably going to come up at a very deeper level if you are opening your relationship. If you are developing relationships with other people, whether they are just sexual, whether they also include an emotional component, or whether they only include an emotional component, your partner may have a sense of fear of rejection or abandonment, that maybe they're not good enough. Maybe the other person is more sought after by you. Maybe the other person is more exciting, or you can fill in all of the different descriptions around what the other person might be that your partner is not, and they might feel fearful that they are being rejected or they are abandoned. You do need to be prepared to work through these things in your partnership. It is important that you are feeling safe, and going back to the foundational piece, that you have a healthy, solid foundation to start from, so that when these things come up, you're prepared that, oh yeah, I knew this was going to happen. And not that there won't be unexpected things that come up, but you want to prepare for these things that are just obvious. In our monogamous relationships, we don't have to deal with some of these things that are in your face if you're working through open relationship. So jealousy, feelings for other people, they're going to happen, right? When we start to engage with other people, people are cool. If we're interested in having some type of connection, most of us have friends, we like them for a reason, because people are great. When we start to get to know people on a deeper level and start to learn things about them, such as maybe shared common interests, maybe some of their vulnerabilities, we form connections and attachments to those. And so we want to assume that this is going to happen and prepare for it. And then if it doesn't, we can be happily surprised, but it's also not a bad thing that it happens. We just want to have a plan of attack if that's what it is. And so if you and your partner have a boundary that going to a certain place with someone is absolutely not okay for you, you want to have a plan of action so that you can back yourself out of that. I also think that it's really important to mention we all have some type of feelings for other people, or friendships, or connections, or just interactions that sometimes we just think about a lot. Okay, I went through this whole day thinking about that really hot guy that I saw, or I went through this day thinking about this friend that I really like because I was worried about them. We at certain times think about, sometimes ruminate, sometimes have anxiety about, sometimes feel great about our connections with other people. But feelings come and go. They don't stay forever. Just like our feelings about our partners come and go. Sometimes we feel more in love with our partners than at other times. And if we have a strong, healthy foundation in our partnerships, we can come back to those feelings of love when we're not feeling so great, when we're feeling annoyed, when we're feeling really passionate. The passion doesn't last forever. It comes and goes, and it continues to come and go if we work hard on having healthy partnerships. But similarly, if we have a little crush on someone else, if we develop those feelings, we can always decide where to go with those. And then we can take appropriate action to redirect ourselves and move through that. I worked with clients years ago, actually, now, who were together since they were kids. They got married, they had children, and they decided to engage in some swinging and opening up of their relationship in that way, just for fun, right? They had a really healthy, solid foundation. They came to me because some boundaries were crossed when two occurrences happened. They were feeling hurt. The first time, one person was feeling hurt, and then the second time, the other person was feeling hurt. And so they wanted to know, how do we go about this? How do we move forward? And so what we settled on here was taking a break from the openness in their relationship. And what they were able to do is they were able to look back fondly on the things that they really enjoyed that had happened, knowing that number one, they were staying together. And number two, that they were super committed to each other and that they knew they were going to get through whatever was going to come their way. Making a pact like that can be really helpful. One of us develops feelings for somebody else, but that doesn't mean that our relationship is going to fail. That doesn't mean that this is going to break up our marriage. It doesn't mean that we're going to end this partnership with one another. It just means that somebody's having feelings that are coming up, and then those feelings slowly start to dissipate. I move forward into a different iteration or phase. The next one is frustration. Frustration is probably going to come up. Say you struggle with scheduling, for example. You're not swinging, but one person gets to go out, and the next weekend another person gets to go out, and then you take a break for 3 months, and then you have another date with somebody that you really like. You feel frustrated because, say, your partner got to go out with somebody, and then when you make plans to go out with someone, they get canceled. Well, this again goes back to the communication piece, because frustration is going to come up when things don't always go your way. Sometimes when boundaries are crossed, frustration comes up. And you want to be open and willing to deal with the frustration and willing to work through it and talk through it and plan with each other. The next thing, one person wants to continue and one person wants to quit. So I suggest that people take their experiences that they have time by time. You might have long discussions for a year or a couple years about having some kind of openness in your relationship. This isn't something that you decide and then a week later you just go for it, right? In a lot of cases, it's an idea that comes up and maybe you mull over it for a while and then you come back and you have a conversation about it. And ultimately, you might decide to move forward. I want any of my couples to take these occasions time by time. Have a first interaction. Let's say, for example, you're practicing swinging. Set up this interaction with another couple and you go into it and you come out and one or both of you is not feeling great about it. Well, if one person is feeling uncomfortable and the other person is like, oh, this is wonderful. This was great. I had such a good time. You want to pause. You don't want to go into another situation where you're swinging again before the other partner feels comfortable to do so. You want to honor your partnership first. If one person isn't feeling okay, then it's not okay for the whole relationship to move forward. At the end of the day, and I think a lot of people kind of bring these ultimatums to the situations, but the reality is that many couples will not break up over these things. Just as we know, and I've shared in another podcast episode, that many couples will struggle with infidelity, but will not end their relationships. They will stay together after the infidelity. Just as that happens in the world of cheating, that also you may decide that that's where you go with this as well. One person not wanting to remain open in the relationship means that you should shut it down or pause it for at least a time so that you can get back on the same page. And this could be an opportunity for you to re-strengthen your relationship together, re-solidify who you are as a couple in your primary relationship, and then make a decision as partners together how you want to move forward. Talking about boundaries, boundaries are really important. You want to set the boundaries up before you start your open relationship experiences, okay? You don't want to go into it and say, we'll just see what happens along the way. Now, that being said, there is no way to completely anticipate how things are going to work. And that's why your communication skills are going to be pivotal here. So you want to ask these types of questions. What type of opening up are we interested in? You want to agree on what that might look like and be creative with it, because one person might say, no, I would never want to swing because I never want to have sex with someone else. But if that's what you want, then that's fine with me. Really flesh out what it is you're looking for before you go into it. I've heard of couples where one partner wants their other partner to be sexual with somebody else, and that partner wants to watch or be involved in it. But the partner that's being asked to be sexual with other people doesn't want to do it at all and doesn't have interest in it. So you really want to come to a good conclusion on what type of openness are you looking at? What does that even look like? Next, what emotional or physical aspects are you comfortable with? So you want to agree on what that looks like. Maybe oral is something that you're like, not okay. We don't want to do that with anyone else. Or maybe kissing. Maybe you can only agree on having emotionally intimate openness with other people, and that's all you can agree on. Maybe there's no penetrative sex. Maybe there's no foreplay. You have to come to a good conclusion on that. They're not necessarily going to be easy conversations, but you have to have them, because if you don't, it's just ripe for problems down the line when people are hurt and now you're dealing with that. You should count on somebody being hurt at some point, but that doesn't mean that it's not something that you can't work through and work on. Okay. Next, what level of feelings and attachment are you okay with for yourself and your partner? You want to consider, am I willing to have an attachment to somebody else where I have deep feelings for this person? Or can it be just like one night stands? I also just want to mention that you should always be sexually safe. So if you're opening your relationship up sexually, then you should be tested for STIs. You should have the person you're engaging with tested as well, or they should be spearheading their own testing, obviously, setting up their appointments. And you should be sharing those results, because you always want to be safe no matter what you're doing. There are safe ways to do this if it's something that you're interested in. Okay, now having a code word. Okay, so this was something that came up with one of my couples a long time ago. They were engaging in something together, swinging with another couple, and they did not have a code word. And so they ended up getting hurt because one partner saw the other partner engaging with another person in a way that they were not okay with, that they felt like was crossing the boundaries of their relationship. So having a code word, like I remember in school when I was younger, there was like code blue in school if something was going wrong. So that always comes to mind. But having some type of code word, whether it's a number, a color, I don't know what it is, it could be a name, like just yell the name like Margaret, I don't know. You have to come up with that on your own. But having a code word so that you can get out of the situation when you need to, and if you need to, whether it's texting your partner, whether you're in the same room and you whisper it to one another, whether you yell it across the room, whatever it is. You could even have a code statement. You could even have a little story that you make up, a scenario like, you know what, Bobby's just having a really hard time. I think that we need to get home right now. A way to get out of it if you're in it and you're feeling uncomfortable, to signal to your partner that, hey, this isn't working. We need to ditch right now. Okay. What to do if things go sideways, if somebody develops feelings? What are we going to do when this happens? You want to have an action plan. And then finally, on my list here, what is your method of opening up? Are you using dating apps? Are you doing this together? Are you doing this separately? And how are you going about this, right? A lot of people use dating apps nowadays. And so you might want to start by doing your research. Maybe you know someone that you want to engage with. That might be a sensitive topic. If your partner's like, oh, I thought you were just friends with that person. If it's like same-sex interaction, you're like, oh, I thought that was like one of your guy friends, or I thought that was one of your girlfriends. Okay, that makes me a little uncomfortable to know that that's something you might want to do with them. So you want to kind of talk and negotiate what that might look like. Maybe it has to be someone random and that's all you can agree on. Someone that doesn't live in the town that you live in, someone that doesn't live in the state that you live in. You want to be safe with everything you're doing, but you really want to in depth have a discussion with your partner around how that might go. But this person wrote, do these ever work out long term? I'm not talking about relationships that start out that way, but relationships that started closed and then opened. By long term, at least 10 years. From what I hear, opening up almost always leads to disaster. If my wife approached me about opening the relationship, I would divorce her on the spot. So, first and foremost, when we talk about these working long term, starting out closed and then opening up, I would not suggest that you start your relationship open. I suggest that you start your relationship closed. And this is why. So, the number one thing here is the foundation of your relationship. You can't really establish a foundation and proper attachment with one another if you are all over the place being open. If you're having multiple deep relationships with other people and that's the route that you're going, it's difficult to form a solid attachment with one another. And so I would suggest that you're closed to begin with so that you can decide with each other, do we actually work together as a couple? And then moving forward to, all right, now do we want to open because it's something that we're interested in and curious about and might work for us? When I look at the first part of this question that says, do these ever work out long term? I think about a client that I had, again, years and years ago, who had some openness with his wife, but they had very different iterations of their relationship over time. So they opened their relationship and then they sort of closed it and then they explored a little bit and then they closed it. Having an open or openness in your relationship in general doesn't mean that your relationship is now open forever and that you're always interacting with other people in that way. Life is very busy, and I don't think that people always have the time to manage multiple relationships. And so I think what this could look like for you over time is that you have an interaction, you debrief on it. I always recommend that you have a debrief discussion after every instance, and that then you decide, do we want to do this again? Do we want to keep moving forward with this? How is this going? Have a relationship meeting every single week. Talk about how your relationship is going, what you're looking forward to, what's not going well for you, what you need from your partner, what you're really loving that's working nowadays. I truly suggest that in your openness as well. If you choose to explore having an open relationship, you need to keep talking about how it's going. And that means that you can make modifications as you go along, as you see fit, and according to what works for you. Opening up doesn't always lead to disaster. No, it's going to work differently for every couple. So the second and last, because I didn't get a reply, but this person said, I'm all in favor of not normalizing this in marriage. Downvote me into oblivion, but open marriages are ripe for abusive behavior and not conducive to a healthy long-term relationship, let alone marriage. So this person, you can tell, is against having some sort of openness in relationship. And what I just want to reiterate here is that it's really important to be serious about what you're doing and not just flippantly say, oh, we're just open and we try these things with other people. Because I do think that it absolutely ends in disaster if you're not doing this in a very well thought out way. I don't think that every open relationship ends in disaster. Going back to that first comment, and I think that it can be conducive to having a healthy marriage and relationship together. Number one, I think that open relationship can strengthen your relationship or marriage. Your partnership can become stronger because you are prompted to deal with things like jealousy and you are confronted with those fears around abandonment. And I think exposure and your ability to re-solidify what you have going on in your primary relationship can be a really healthy thing to do. If you're not doing it right, it can wreak havoc. Your relationship absolutely could end if there's so much hurt that happens. But if you're having those regular discussions with each other about how things are going and you adjust as necessary, I absolutely believe that you can have lots and lots of success. Thanks so much for tuning into the podcast. If you're new to our community, welcome. We really want our podcast to grow, so please like, follow, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review with your feedback on how we can make your experience most catered to you. As I work with my private clients continuously, this podcast is a great way for me to help more of you. Please reach out if you have any